And the police day ends with me, and we made it one more day. Please see the editorial down in the description below. This editorial reads in part this, quote, "Federal prosecutors, the media, civic watchdog groups, and independent inspector generals keep a pretty close watch on Chicago and other big units of government. But nobody keeps the same close eye on our region's smaller towns and suburbs. When corruption finally is unearthed in a suburb, it is not unusual to find it had been going on for a very long time, quietly tearing down the town from within. A powerful check against public corruption, even in a small community, can be an inspector general. Every town or a group of towns should employ a fully empowered inspector general. When a town does not, an inspector general employed by the county should have the legal authority to step in." End quote. Now, of course, that is in Illinois, and it's speaking of Chicago, and it appears to be referencing the small town of, I believe it's called Fox Lake in Illinois, where there was a police officer that was caught stealing for 7 years, and then and he was the person that faked his own death and blamed it on 3 assailants, and it turned out he was lying. So that's referencing small towns in Illinois, but it can reference any town in the country, like Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Now, folks, I do get this person's point, but I would still be concerned in a small, low population area, would the person, this inspector general, still just fall in line with the rest of the corrupt people? And I don't mean the citizens, I mean the people in authority, the elected officials like in Bartlesville, Oklahoma and Washington County, Oklahoma, that are corrupt to the core and doing the things that they're doing. You can go back and watch all the videos to know the details. To me, it is an issue of lack of personal accountability. When you don't hold people personally responsible for their actions, you wind up with terrible corruption. Right? I mean, what could possibly go wrong if people can just blame a system or say, well, I was just doing my job, and be not held personally accountable? What could possibly go wrong if people can just skirt their personal responsibility? It's totally un-American to believe that you have free will, you're in a free country, you have freedom of speech, freedom of travel, which do we anymore? That's a separate point, but you're supposedly free, but yet you can simply say, I was just doing my job, I'm not personally responsible for corrupt actions I take. That's just bull. That's not only is it childish, but it's corrupt to say, I'm going to do bad things, and then I'm going to blame it on the system, our government, rather than say I'm responsible. No, you are personally responsible for each decision you make. Just going along with a group of corrupt people does not make it okay. Just because you're playing politics and your number one desire in everything is to do a popularity contest and be liked in everything you do. So if there's a big group of people that are corrupt and they're doing bad things, like the Bartlesville Police, the Bartlesville City Council, James Phillips Medical Center leadership, and many others, just because they're a big group of powerful people and they're going corrupt direction, doesn't mean you get to follow along and say it's not my responsibility. It doesn't matter if you have to stand on the outside, like me, and be hated by so many people for bringing this stuff forward. Nobody wants to hear bad things. Everyone hates a whistleblower. That's what I'm doing, blowing the whistle on this. And everyone dislikes that person because they're rocking the boat. But you don't get to go along with corrupt people and just say, I'm still a good person, I was just doing my job. It's the system's fault. I'm not corrupt, they're corrupt. I just going along because I wanted to get along. It's like I said, that's grade school behavior. It's stupid, it's un-American, and we didn't get our Constitution and civil and human rights that we don't have anymore because it's just written on paper now, because people like the Bartlesville police ignore it, but we could get it back. But you don't do that by simply saying, oh, I'm going to be a sheeple and I'm just going to follow along with the corrupt people. No, you stand and you deliver a message that says, no, that ain't going to happen. And hey, if that means, like me, I can't run for public office now because I'm not safe on the streets from the Bartlesville police, and with all this stirred up, who would, people would, there's always going to be enough people to say, I don't like that guy now. So whatever. So that means I don't get to run for public office. It doesn't mean that I'm any less American. It doesn't mean I'm any less of a citizen, and it doesn't mean that I don't have a responsibility as an individual to stand up and say, no, I'm not going to go along with corruption, and I'm not going to abide it. Period. And I'm going to tell you something else. For you people that say, oh, shut up and be quiet, while you think you're free, you can thank me and the other whistleblowers. You're riding on our backs. It's people like whistleblowers that create enough government accountability to keep this from going even further. Yes, you're cowards. The people that do not want to address corruption and want to go along with it are cowards. And I'm not up here pounding my chest saying I'm so brave. What I am saying is it doesn't matter how I feel about it, and it doesn't matter how you feel about it either. It has to be done. End of story. It's an objective thing. Corruption? No. Doesn't matter if you don't like me for it. Doesn't matter how you feel. Doesn't matter how I feel about it. It just simply has to be done. I'll move on now. When you allow people to say, it's not my fault that what I did was wrong, it's not my fault. It doesn't matter that it was wrong, immoral, unethical, illegal, and a civil and human rights violation and against the Constitution. If you allow people to say that, then you wind up with your entire local government corrupt. Each person blaming the mystical, invisible government that has no one that is truly responsible for anything. You wind up with fascism, with everyone pointing fingers at everyone else, nobody taking a stand and saying, no, this is wrong. We're not going to breach human and civil rights in the Constitution. We're not going to allow the police to be used as political toys to go after political candidates. We're not going to cover it up. We're not going to allow theft from police and beating of citizens and hitting citizens with their car on purpose and then getting out and tasing them, unarmed citizens, by the way. We're not going to allow this to go on. We're not going to allow it to be acceptable. I'm not saying this is illegal, but I am saying it is very much unacceptable behavior. We're not going to allow police to, or rather judges' wives, which that account could easily have been the judge himself, to like comments from police about rape victims shouldn't call the police. That is unacceptable. Sure, it may be free speech. Now, it's not free speech if you're representing the government, if you're representing your position, which I'm not saying that that was what was going on because that was his wife's account. But we all know that a husband could easily use a wife's account. I'm not accusing anyone. I'm saying it is absolutely factual that that account, that Facebook account, was used to like a comment from a police officer representing the police at the time that told rape victims not to call the police. You can go to my Facebook page and look at it. It's a fact. And what the police officer did is not a legal government position. You cannot say that someone complaining about the Bartlesville police beating a handcuffed citizen on video is a reason for the police to reply and say, if you're raped, don't call the police. That is not an allowed legal government position. You cannot retaliate on people for First Amendment speech, especially one that is so obviously okay. It's perfectly okay for a citizen of Bartlesville to communicate that they do not appreciate Bartlesville police officers beating handcuffed citizens on videotape. It's perfectly acceptable to make that statement and should not be met with a reply from a police officer representing the police in his police position telling him that if you're raped, don't call the police. Not him. He was referring to rape victims. And who are they mostly? They're mostly women. You can read those comments. They are factual. Last time I checked, they're still live on the internet. You can click on that on my Facebook page and go to it. Even if they're deleted, I got screenshots of them. It's not acceptable for judges or judges' wives to like those types of comments. It's not illegal, but it's not acceptable. And it is an illegal government position what that police officer did. I'm not saying that it rises to a level of him personally breaking the law, but I am saying that his position is an illegal government position. The government's not allowed to do that. That's fact. There's no gray about that. That is a yes or no issue, and the answer to that is no, damn it, no. Just like the fascism and corruption of the Bartlesville police in Washington County of Oklahoma, this is what you get. This is what you get when you don't hold people personally accountable. When they know they're not held personally accountable and they run rampant with corruption. It's insane. Where the corporate leaders of James Phillips Medical Center, Mike Moore and James Brazel, can direct the Bartlesville police to go after people, even go to their house in large groups with guns, and tear their homes apart, and steal from them, and threaten them, put their lives at risk, and have it go on for now going on 2 years. Think about that. Think about that police state tactic, where there are actually people like Mike Moore and James Brazel that send hit squads out to attack people of the United States of America. It is happening, and I'm sure I'm not the only person this has happened to. Without anyone being held personally accountable in corporations and government, along with the wealthy and well-connected people being able to remain lawless as they see fit, with the backing of the corrupt Bartlesville police, you wind up with this cesspool of corruption that is the Bartlesville police state. No more, folks. No more. And now again, I want to point out that what I'm going through is awful, and it's completely unacceptable or livable. But I believe it is about 1% of what minorities and minority communities are encountering from this corrupt police state. I don't know how you do it. You're tougher than me, and I don't pretend that what I'm going through even remotely matches what minorities and minority communities are going through. However, even what I'm going through is too much, and it must stop. And the police state ends with me. And with that said, I'll see you tomorrow.